well, 2 more rain showers later, and I was starting to get quite desperate looking for a campsite. There were no picnic tables along the route, some bench seats along the way, and I almost took one of them, but there was a hive of prickles that I didn't really want to sleep amongst. Before I found this, look at this. It's a picnic table, so I think it's legal, because doing things legally is important to me in France. I don't want to be arrested by the gendarmerie, and during the time they are investigating, somebody happens to pass me on the tour. So a quick erection, and most of my gear is in there. My mattress is pretty wet, but there is even the threat of a bit of sunlight, just the hint of a bit of blue sky coming through. So maybe I am blessed. Just as I was setting up my tent, Frenchman passed by, and he called out bonjour, and he smiled at me. So obviously he didn't have any problem with what I'm doing here. In fact, I think I'm living his best life, even if I'm not living my best life. Some people say I'm the world's greatest living adventurer, the world champion, undisputed, reigning heavyweight world champion of adventuring. But for me, it's not about the accolades, it's not about the Nobel Prizes, it's not about the knighthood I turned down yesterday at Queen's birthday. For me, cycling around France and beating the Tour de France, even look at these guys here, they're going the wrong way. For me, it's about proving to you, my friends, my audience, that cycling is very terrible, that roads were invented for cars, not cyclists, and that if you really want to ride a bike, get an exercycle and restrict the wearing of lycra to your own lounge. I've just stopped in a small village where there is a couple of very nice picnic tables under cover. And what looks like a 12th, 13th century church. 75 kilometers from Paris. It would be very nice to camp here tonight, but I'm hoping to get a little bit closer so that I'm not cycling all day on my ride into the capital. I've been inundated all day with these nasty little mouches, bugs that just, as soon as I pause, they're in my face and on all my clothes and heading for my nose and my ears, and even get inside my helmet through the holes. Bit of a design flaw. It's meant to give a bit of air, but no, they're nasty little things. And I think they have come to the fore because Normandy has had a storm the last few days, which explains all the thunder and lightning and the very heavy rain. I haven't been following the news here much. I'm more into making the news than watching it. But the aftermath is these nasty little bugs. First time, no bugs. So I'm just going to relish it for a moment and have something to drink. Well, I'm 90 kilometers into my ride today, and I've just crossed out of Normandy, and I'm now in Ile-de-France, the region that includes Paris. So I'm officially in the outskirts of Paris with 50 kilometers to go. Most of the locals are reasonably friendly. This little fellow likes to stare. He's not camera shy, is he? Just as many bugs as there were in Normandy, and not enjoying them. I think all this horse shit around is probably less likely to see them dissipate. I'm going to try and cover a little bit further tonight. There's a nice little picnic table over there, but there are a few kids playing around, and I need to get something to drink for tonight because I'm running low on liquid. So I'll see how far I get. Hopefully there'll be an episode that's open before I go past. Right, situation report. I'm pretty buggered actually. I've spent the last hour and a half looking for a campsite, and I've finally settled on a place just on the edge of a farm, but it's on a greenway. In the last 10-15 minutes, only 2 women runners have come past, and I obviously wasn't so out of place that they started running faster once they had passed me. One even smiled at me. So yeah, 125 kilometres covered today. I've only got 30 kilometres left to get to Paris tomorrow morning, and because I'm wild camping, I tend to start quite a bit earlier. I have some food, I've got something to drink. I've even got a little bottle of wine, not a full bottle, it's a small bottle, because even though you've been ploughing the footpaths and the tarmac, it's no excuse for going over the top. Just behind me on this busy street 20 kilometres west of Paris is the Château de Versailles, the Palace of Versailles, the great construction of Louis XIV, and it was the interior decorating that got Marie Antoinette into so much trouble just leading up to the revolution. It's closed at the moment, and I would stick around to show you more, but I've got to go to breakfast, so you might have to consult Wikipedia. Just to show off, I have found the Seine. It's the second longest river in France, and I'm very near Paris actually. You can tell by all the traffic. Paris has been in existence for well over 2,000 years. It was founded by a Gaulish tribe, the Parisi tribe, hence the name Paris in France. And this is how close they are to Paris itself, just over the water. By the way, that's the Eiffel Tower, named after Gustave Eiffel. And it's a little known fact, but Eiffel was given his name as a child because one time Eiffel offered it, and he survived it, and then they put him in charge of building tall things. Strange but true history. Here on the Pont des Invalides, there are statues everywhere, as there are throughout Paris, monuments to France, to Paris, its culture, its history. Just behind me there's a statue of a Tsarina. Over this shoulder, a statue of the great liberator on his horse, Simon Bolivar, who was inspired by the French Revolution, obviously loved French culture. If you ask a Frenchman, they will tell you that no other country has a culture, a history, a life as rich as the French, and it's not just a belief, they know it to be true. And I wonder if many of us in Anglo-Saxon places have quite the same appreciation for our history. A few days ago I was in Normandy, on the Normandy beaches, and sitting in a restaurant, and an English grandmother was sitting with her daughter and her grandson, and the grandson said, well, when were we invaded, as they were looking at through the Normandy beaches, and the grandmother replied, well, England is one of the few countries in the world that has never been invaded, which was kind of ironic, because she was sitting just a few metres from where William of Normandy set off in 1066 to successfully conquer England. Well, next morning in Paris, I was riding through a park, not paying attention very much to my surroundings, mainly focused on the directions coming from my phone, and I realized I was riding along towards the Bastille. This is the site of the Bastille prison that the storming of it on the 14th of July 1789 was one of the most memorable flashpoints of the French Revolution. But this July column here actually commemorates a second revolution in 1830, 3 glorious days that saw the overthrow of the Bourbon King of France. I'm heading out of Paris today. It's damp and it's actually quite nerve-wracking. The cyclists here all have the joint middle names of Evil and Knievel, and it's not very pleasant trying to dodge them. A couple of times yesterday I felt like I was on borrowed time. This part of town has been turned over to cyclists more than cars, and I'm less worried about people in vehicles, even though they're bigger targets to hit, than the psychology of cyclists, made even more challenging by the wet, greasy surfaces, and a rider like me who's not very confident in urban surroundings. So my advice to the next Transport Minister in New Zealand is, next time you get a proposal for a cycleway, cancel it and then introduce a legal ban on cycling, because as the French have shown me, cyclists are just a menace. Thankfully I've made it out of the urban jungle that is Paris, and the downside is the bugs have started up again. Paris is not fun to ride through. They've turned it into a cycle-friendly city, but in the process they've made getting around the place pretty menacing to everybody else. There are some parts where I just wouldn't walk as a pedestrian anymore, because it's just so terrifying with all the cyclists. I've already talked about what a menace they are, but in Paris it's not just the cyclists. The people are less friendly, the dogs are more menacing, and some of the infrastructure that's designed to help cyclists is quite uncomfortable if you are a cycle tourist with a big rig like mine. I went through a park yesterday that had these turnstiles that were put there to prevent cars and people on motorbikes and even motor scooters from going through. Cyclists and prams and pedestrians only. And in this park there are about 6 of these quite convoluted turnstiles to get through. And somehow they designed them that it was very hazardous to get through on my rig. In fact, each time I went through them, I managed to jam one of my 3 crown jewels, and it was always the same crown jewel each time. So in the future, if all of my children play cricket left-handed, it will be because of the turnstiles of France. I'm here in the French village of Montguéron. Montguéron has mythical status for French cyclists because it was here in 1903 that the first Tour de France set off. It's only 2,500 kilometres then, and they didn't do the big extreme mountain passes. But the winner of it, Maurice Garin, sort of set the theme for the ages of the Tour de France. He won the title in 1903, and then in 1904 he was expelled and stripped of his title for cheating. There were no big drug issues back then, but he did put his bike on the train to get from point to point a little bit faster, which I can say, thankfully, or perhaps I wish I had done so, taken a few more leaves out of his book. So far I've travelled quite a bit further than the first Tour de France, but I still have some way to go because I've done 3/4 the way round, and I've decided to go a little bit further. So for those of you who were surprised that I'm still continuing after Paris, it's because I'm a machine. So I've been looking for a campsite tonight, and I'm currently in a park. I found a park, it's got them, it's 10 to 9, don't want to cycle any further. I want to make some food, or at least eat some food, and set up my tent at some point. Apparently this place has a closing time around 9 p.m, but nobody has come nearby yet. I'll be a bit stuck if they turf me out, but I'm not going to set up tent until 15 minutes has passed. I'll give it a go. Okay, I am committed for the night. I went and had a look at the sign. There was no big sign saying no camping, but when I read the fine print, it did say no camping, caravanning, which I suppose could be a wee bit ambiguous. But it's 10 to 10. Sunset has just happened. I'm dealing with the bugs. There shouldn't be much light out for much longer, but we'll see how we go. I think my strategy, if approached, is to speak German and say that I thought we were still the occupying force. Can't think of anything else. So I did survive the night in the park, didn't get molested by any of the security people. I'm in a little village, late morning. It's about an hour and a half's train commute to Paris from here, so this is in the country proper, and it's got its own sense of life. It's not a parasite of Paris, it doesn't need Paris, it lives pretty independently. I've unlocked a major achievement on the Tour de France. I don't want to mention anybody by name, but one of my friends let's call him Dino, gave me all sorts of advice because he's a mad keen cyclist and therefore there's something wrong with his head. He gave me the advice that I should clean my bike every 2 or 3 days and that I should oil my chain about as often. I think that's what he said. And again, I don't want to single him out because given my YouTube popularity is getting to the point that my followers will probably track him down and pile scorn and all sorts of hateful thoughts towards him. But Dino gave me this advice, which I promptly ignored. I went for a bike service about 5 days in Sommières, about 3,000 kilometres that way. But I haven't touched it since. And I thought the bike was going fine, but I reflected this morning how the dogs haven't been barking and screaming and making a big wail of noise towards me in the last 24 hours. And I think that was because at Montgeron I bought some oil. It wasn't bicycle chain oil because they didn't have that in the supermarket. It was scooter chain oil. And I have to say that the chain has stopped squeaking. I made a hell of a mess of the ground as I was sort of spraying it all over the place, and I think I even got some of it onto the rear brake thing, disc, because the rear brakes weren't going very well for a while, but so be it. But I have to say, since I've done that, the dogs have got a lot friendlier. And whether that's because they're no longer snooty Parisian dogs, or if actually I'm not making a racket at a certain frequency that is driving them insane. So far they've been kinder. So double win all round. I'm not sure I need to do it every 3 days, but whenever the pedaling gets a bit difficult and noisy, I may take that to task. First piece of bike maintenance I have ever done by myself. So if that doesn't deserve a Nobel Prize, I don't know what does.